Okay, so welcome everyone. I'm Catherine McKinnon, and if you don't know me already, I'm the volunteer and membership coordinator for the Mount Shasta Bioregional Ecology Center. And today we have Ryan Henson here giving us a presentation on National Forest Management Plan revision, how you can get involved as public, and how you can make comments and basically just be a part of that process. Ryan is the Senior Policy Director at the California Wilderness Coalition, and we are very pleased to have him here. Thanks for being here, Ryan.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Should I launch right in?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Yeah. So, as was mentioned, my name's Ryan Henson, and I'm with Cal Wild. I've been with Cal Wild since 1994, and I live just down the road from Mount Shasta in Shasta County in Anderson, but I work statewide, so I guess I'll launch into my PowerPoint here. Now, you folks will be the, oh, I'm not sharing my screen. Let's start with that. All right. Okay. Yeah, so you folks will be the first audience to ever see this. The forest plan revision processes for Northwest California is something that is just starting to happen, and it's going to go on for a couple years. And but like I said, it's just starting to happen. So this is the first slideshow I put together on it. So you get to be my first test audience. So this is, as you'll learn, an important opportunity to help influence about 6% of California, or 5.9 million acres. Okay, and let's start with some basics. 46% of California is federal public land, and of that, 20 billion acres, or 20% of California, is Forest Service land. And Forest Service land is called national forests. Okay, and Mount Shasta is in the Shasta-Trinity National Forest, which is California's largest national forest. The Forest Service chief, that the head of the Forest Service is called the Chief of the Forest Service, and his name is Randy Moore, and that's him there. And prior to getting the job as the head of the entire U.S. Forest Service, he was the head of the Forest Service here in California, I believe for 15 years or so. So what's exciting is those of us who are active in national forest issues here in California, a lot of us know Randy, and now he's in a place where hopefully he can do good things for California's national forests. And again, the Forest Service manages 193 million acres nationwide, and again, 20 million acres in California. Okay. Oh, and there are 20 national forests in California, 18 that are entirely in California, and then 2 that come in from other states that we have little pieces of. Oh, and here's a very awful map. Believe it or not, this is the best map available from the Forest Service on the national forests of California. We need a better one that I can find. And this shows at least the ones in Northern California. And what we're going to focus on today are the ones in bold, and that's the Klamath, which is in purple there in Northwest California. The Rogue River Siskiyou, which comes down from Oregon, that's in bright red in Northwest California. The Shasta-Trinity, again, California's largest, where Mount Shasta is, and that's in light green there. And the Mendocino in dark green. And again, those together equal 5.9 million acres, okay? So let's quickly review why are national forests important, okay? And by the way, all these photos are from these 4 national forests. This is the 6 rivers here. About 47% of the state's water supply flows from our national forests. This has an economic value of $9.5 billion annually. This is the Smith River here. Well, a little side creek going into the Smith River in the Six Rivers National Forest. National forests are extremely important to the continued survival of California's native plants and wildlife, such as the species here, the Mount Lassick lupin on the left that only grows on Mount Lassick in the Six Rivers National Forest, as well as species like the Pacific fisher shown here on the right. And then since much of California is private land and open to development, many species of plants and wildlife depend upon public lands like our national forests to survive. The flower on the left is an endangered species in the Mendocino National Forest, and the salamander, I believe, is the Shasta salamander in the Shasta-Trinity National Forest, which is an endangered species. Many species also need public lands as core habitat. This is a tule elk and a burrowing owl, which occurs in more than one of the 4 national forests, and as connections between areas of core habitat. So again, many species need public lands as core habitat and as connections between areas of core habitat. Core habitat is the best habitat. I should have defined that. So many species need public lands as their best remaining habitat and as connections between those areas of best remaining habitat. I hope that makes sense. Okay, public lands also provide scenery, such as this spectacular scenery here, the Mount Shasta Wilderness in the Shasta-Trinity National Forest. Okay, and calling Mount Shasta scenery is really sort of underselling it and its importance. So, but you get it. You get what I'm saying. Scenery is an extremely important part of our lives. It's not just scenery, quote unquote. Public lands also include enormous cultural resources for Native people, for Indigenous people. And we shouldn't just think of the obvious like petroglyphs shown here, but we should also think about entire landscapes, such as the Medicine Lake Highlands of the Modoc National Forest. An entire region that is of enormous tribal importance to more than one tribe. That's also can be true of springs and rivers, plants, animals, all sorts of things in our, not just things, but landscapes and can be of enormous cultural importance to Native people, is my point. Public lands also offer opportunities for science, multiple opportunities for science, as you can imagine, including volcanology up in the Medicine Lake Highlands, or maybe at Mount Shasta, and many other very important areas of study, including, by the way, a lot of study of fossils in the Shasta-Trinity National Forest, in those limestone beds near Shasta Reservoir. So, public lands also, of course, offer historic resources, such as cabins in the Marble Mountain Wilderness in the Klamath National Forest. And they're something that's often underappreciated is their importance in maintaining our dark sky environment, which is not just something for humans to appreciate, but something that's important for many species. Public lands are also important for recreation. And I noticed only too late that I left out the word skiing here, which is a very important activity in the Mount Shasta region. But as you can imagine, nearly everything else is allowed in national forests. And the biggest things that occur on national forests are hiking and walking, just viewing the landscape, basically relaxing or hanging out, viewing wildlife, and then driving for pleasure. Those are the biggest things that people do on national forests. And that activity, that recreation activity on national forests results in $92 billion in consumer spending in California, and a lot of other great direct benefits that are often underappreciated when we look instead at national forests as just sources of minerals through mining or timber through logging, rather than their value as recreation resources. and the economic benefits that are derived from that. And I don't know why the text is being so dramatic and like slowly appearing. I wish it would appear all at once. Public lands are also very important for mitigating the impacts of climate change. This area here, by the way, is the largest area of unlogged ancient forest in California, outside the national park or the wilderness system. And guess where it is? It's in the Shasta-Trinity National Forest, your national forest, but it's in the Trinity Park. And it's called the Chinkapin Proposed Wilderness, and it's in Trinity County. But it is the type of area that's extremely important at a time of climate change to keep those big trees standing, because it offers a tremendous refuge for species that will depend on ancient forests to survive. By the way, it's taken us so long to get this area protected that that little girl in this photo has not only learned how to drive, but I think she's like, she can drink now. It's really appalling. That's how long it takes to protect public land, folks. Public lands also provide habitat connections across landscapes and refuges for species that have nowhere else to go, such as the Mount Lassick lupin that I mentioned earlier, or the vernal pool fairy shrimp that live in little wetlands that are formed by seasonal rains and then they dry up. They have nowhere else to go. So old growth trees and forest soils store countless tons of carbon. And this is a big tree in the Shasta-Trinity. And public lands also provide places for healing and spiritual renewal. And I understand there's a lot of spirituality in Mount Shasta, you know, and a lot of it is based, I understand, around the land, you know, and so maybe folks there can relate to that. This is a group of veterans that we took out to find some healing in our public lands. I'm a veteran, by the way, so this role of public lands as a place of healing always gets me a little emotional if I don't watch it. So threats to public lands include, and this is a threatened landscape in Lake County, adjacent to the Mendocino National Forest, called Walker Ridge. Threats to public lands include, the number one threat is a lack of financial resources. Our Congressman, Mr. LaMalfa, he never votes to properly fund the National Park Service, the U.S. Forest Service, or the Bureau of Land Management. Thanks to people like him, our congressman, our national forests and the U.S. Forest Service suffer from enormous maintenance backlogs and other problems. Okay, and it's a serious, serious problem. And it is the number one problem that our national forests face. Another problem they face is having too many roads. The Shasta-Trinity National Forest has 5,300 miles of road, or at least they did in 2010. 5,300 miles of road. And I meant to Google how far that is across the United States and whatnot, but it's pretty far, I'm sure. And all those were put in to subsidize logging. You know, a lot of that logging is over now, and it's time that maybe some of these roads be restored, closed and restored after, of course, a public process, you know. And we don't want to close roads that are really important to people, but not all roads you'll find are important to people. Some are very rarely traveled and are more a source of problems than they are public access. Another big problem is habitat fragmentation. This is a picture of the Shasta-Trinity National Forest, again, the Trinity side, where we have ancient forest on the southwest corner here. And then you see various grades of green as we go across the landscape. As you see areas that have been logged over time. Also, of course, areas that have been burned and then logged. This is, oh, and of course, roads and roads and roads. All this is habitat fragmentation in old growth forest habitat. And it's a real problem if you're a species like, you know, a Pacific fisher that needs continuous old growth habitat to get across the landscape. We also have, and this is an issue I don't have an answer for, I really don't have an answer for this. We also have a fire management regime that makes fires worse. We put out fires because we find them scary and threatening, and it just makes fuels build up and make the next fire worse. And I don't know the solution to that, except that it's at the same time killing our forests, because our forests have evolved with fire and they need fire to remain healthy, and we're depriving them of fire. So we need to change something. So again, it's threatening people by making fires worse, and it's also killing our forests by depriving them of the occasional fires they need to remain healthy. Okay, we also, and this is something I know the answer to, we also have poor logging practices that replace big trees with small ones, okay? Not a good thing to be doing anymore in the opinion of my organization. There's been enough of that. We also have a problem with existing and proposed new dams, such as this dam on the Eel River in the Mendocino National Forest, which has been proposed for removal. And of course, the dams on the Klamath, which are planned for removal now in the Klamath National Forest. And then, of course, there's the threat of raising Shasta Dam that would affect the McCloud River and the Shasta-Trinity National Forest. So dams are a real problem. And lastly, irresponsible recreation, such as people riding off-road vehicles through meadows and things like that, and not staying on the roads. That's another problem for our national forests. And it's a problem with the lack of it results from the lack of funding. Oh, and I'm sorry, that wasn't lastly. Lastly, development in the wrong places, such as the proposal to drill for geothermal energy in the Medicine Lake Highlands of the Modoc National Forest, which isn't in the 4 forests that are going to be revising their plans, but is next door. And in fact, you can see Mount Shasta there from Medicine Lake here. So, oh, and gosh darn it, that isn't lastly. Trespass marijuana cultivation is a problem that has been getting worse. And I won't go into it in any detail, but it does cause the problems such as you see here, where people bring in months of material, food and supplies for camping, propane containers, things like that, and they leave all that garbage behind and only take out the marijuana and their weapons. Okay, and it's a real problem. And they leave lots of herbicides and pesticides and other toxics behind in the forest for somebody else to clean up. And lots of wildlife get killed by this activity. I've personally seen bears and many other species, lots of deer killed at these sites. So there's 3 best ways to help, and we're only going to talk about one of them tonight. So don't worry. The 3 best ways are to pass laws to protect our public lands. And I complained earlier about how long that takes. That little girl grew up. Okay, so we're not going to talk about that tonight. The other thing is we need to convince Congress to provide more funding for our public lands. We're not going to talk about that tonight, okay? So no more complaining about the congressman. But something we will talk about tonight is the development of good long-term management plans. That is a way that you can help and an opportunity that's coming right up. So why are these land management plans important? Okay, every national forest has to have one. They're called land and resource management plans, LMPs. Well, even though they're land and resource management plans, for some reason people leave the R out and just call them LMPs. So, but I'm just going to call them here land management plans so as to not confuse you in any way. So here's why they're important. They direct every aspect of public land management. Okay, is that important enough for you? They direct every aspect of public land management, and the plans last for 15 to 20 years or more. Okay, and if we can convince the agencies to do so, the plans can protect important lands and waters for decades. Okay, so that's why they're important. That's why they're important to a conservation group like mine. There's other reasons why they'd be important to tribes or any number of other folks, okay? So what is my organization's goal? What are my organization's goals in these planning processes, okay? So here's our target. This is Jennifer Eberline. She's the head of the Forest Service in California. Her title is Regional Forester. And I haven't actually met her yet. She's brand new. And our goal is to convince her to do the following in each of the 4 national forests that are going to have their plans revised. We want plans that protect the wildest remaining parts of our national forests, such as blurry Mount Eddy here. Well, that's Mount Shasta in the background, but this is Mount Eddy in the foreground and the Pacific Crest Trail. Places like Mount Eddy are known as roadless areas, large areas that don't have any roads constructed in them. And it's these areas, conservation groups have been trying to protect them since the 1970s. And it's really high time that they get protected from development, in perpetuity, really. We also want plans to protect streams like the McCloud River, which is shown here. The upper McCloud, I mean, not the part with the dam in it, from further dams and road construction and things like that. And there's many other wonderful streams in the 4 national forests that could benefit from protection from things like dam construction. We also want plans to protect all the remaining old growth forests and large trees. Okay, what is a large tree? Well, actually, I don't know, but I think it's a debate we ought to engage in as a community and as with the science, with scientists and land managers and others. But for me, the bottom line is this: the largest trees, whatever they happen to be, should be spared. Okay, and the old growth forests, however you want to define them, need to be spared. I think it's time to say that. No more fiddling around. Okay, and we also need to practice forestry that promotes the restoration of big trees across the landscape. Now, I'm not saying grow big trees where they never grew before. That's not what I'm saying at all. But rather places like this, where you can see the giant tree the logger is standing on and all the awful stuff that's grown up after clear cutting. This young thicket of young unhealthiness has grown up after clear cutting. This is the type of logging we want to move away from, is eliminating all the big trees and resulting in a forest of a thicket of young trees. So instead, we should be practicing a type of forestry that promotes the growth of big trees once more, okay, on sites such as this that had supported them at one time. I really flubbed that whole point, but you get my point. Practice a forestry that wants to grow bigger trees, not take away the biggest trees for profit. We also want fire used more often as a management tool. Now we know that's difficult, it's complicated, and it's dangerous. But after the appropriate precautions are taken and doing it right and with the right planning, it's essential that fire be used more often as a management tool. There's no way around it, folks. If we want healthy public lands, if we want healthy forests, we got to do it, okay? Also, if we want public safety, we got to do it. On the other hand, we shouldn't do it if it's excessively dangerous. So, as a result, my group at least supports things like thinning, creating things like shaded fuel breaks in strategic locations to help perhaps stem the spread of fires, maybe reduce the severity of fires, things like that. As you know, I was mentioning to some other folks just before this. It's actually, the science on this is not even really clear. Okay, I'll be honest with you. And in a high wind storm, it really doesn't matter what you do with these shaded fuel breaks. I'm the first to admit that. But I'll be honest with you. The Forest Service will continue to log. Congress wants them to, and they're going to do it. But my feeling is this. Let's make them do logging like the type shown here, where they leave the big trees. Okay, this is a before and after, by the way. On the left is before and on the right is after. You can see how much they left. That's after the logging on the right. Compare that to what they've been doing for all these years of clear cutting. So I again flubbed that point as well. But This is the first slideshow. Now, in addition, hey, the Shasta-Trinity and forests like it have enough roads. They have enough roads, okay? So no new roads. We're putting a line in the sand. I mean, on the other hand, there can be some access to private land is totally different. That's a right under federal law, okay? We're not talking about that. But no new roads for things like logging, okay? No new roads for things like logging, okay? In addition, the Forest Service needs to go through the painful public process of identifying the roads that they can close and do away with, okay? And when they do close them after the public process, do things like shown here, where they actively restore the land to make it as though the road was never there. Now, you don't need to always do that, but where it's where the scientists or where the specialists say it would be best for the fish to do that. By the way, this work here was done by the Karuk tribe on a contract for the Forest Service. So as a side benefit, we also want to use these planning processes to build coalitions in support of our national forests. Because, you know, as I've been complaining about, they really lack things like funding, and they get bashed a lot by politicians. And we want to build, and I've been bashing them a lot about the way they log and stuff, but we want to build more support for our national forests, particularly for their funding. And we want to use these planning processes to find new allies. This is the lovely PCT bridge over the Squaw Valley Creek in the Shasta-Trinity National Forest, just south of McLeod. I know Squaw Valley Creek is an awful name, but I can't help it. And then what's next? Well, these are two bald eagles on the Shasta-Trinity, by the way, that I saw while driving. So what's next? Well, public comment periods will come up later this year. I don't have a date for you yet, but public comment periods will come up for the Klamath, the Mendocino, the Shasta-Trinity, and the Six Rivers. And again, that's 5.9 million acres, or 6% of California. And if nothing else, please step up for your local Shasta-Trinity. And you're not that far from the Klamath, really. So we'd love an opportunity to alert you to these public comment opportunities. I'm just reading this like a boring person, but okay, when these public comment periods come up, we'd love an opportunity to let you know about them. And maybe by then we'll have like the perfect message to send to the Forest Service, but you can either echo our message or you can come up with one of your own. But please do engage in these public comment periods when we give you a shout out that they're coming up. And to get on our mailing list, you know, please contact me at the email shown here. And I'll be happy to follow up with you and include you on the list for this effort. And again, if I didn't say so already, this effort will last probably about 3 years or more. They're very long. It's kind of awful. So we could use all the help we could get. And so could our forests. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm gonna pin. That was great. I actually looked up the 5,300 miles of road that you had mentioned, and that would be from the coast to coast and then halfway back to the middle of the country. So that's,
oh my gosh,
very lots of road. And I also liked how you mentioned kind of building coalition with our national forests and kind of trying to build a better relationship with them. So when you're working with like the regional forester, are these like letters that are being sent to this person, or how does that work normally?
Yeah, good question. And hey, if you don't mind, I'd like to add something that for some reason I skipped entirely. Yeah. I mentioned the science isn't in on a lot of the fire stuff, but one thing science is in on is that big trees are more resistant to fire than small ones. They have thicker bark and the branches are higher up on the trees. So growing big trees and saving the last big trees that already exist is a key part of fire resilience. And another thing I failed to mention is that one of the key things about preserving areas without roads is that most fires, well, nearly all human caused, well, 90 some odd % of human caused fires start along roads. Okay. Some are from, somebody has a backcountry campfire maybe, but that's like less than 10%. So most of them start along roads and they're started by people. And so preserving areas without roads is a great way to keep fire from those areas. And it doesn't mean keeping people out. It just means, even fat guys like me can't drive. We got to walk, or ride a mountain bike or whatever. So.
Awesome. So the idea with the old growth forests and kind of logging that way would be that they'd be more fire resilient, basically, these areas would be.
Absolutely. Preserving wild areas, saving the big trees, all that helps add up to fire resilience. And then, of course, doing those treatments in the right places, such as adjacent to private property, which I also failed to mention, and which is a key place to do work. Oh, you and I were talking offline about how working around communities is so important. And so one of the things that would be great for folks who are listening to this to provide input about would be, dear Forest Service, please tie in your fuels reduction efforts with those of existing in the community of Mount Shasta. Like that would make total sense to sync them up,
Yeah.
So that would be a great comment, and it's certainly one that my organization might forget to make because we're not local. So another reason for people to, and so I'm sorry, what was your question?
Oh, no, I was just going to make a comment. And for those who don't know, one of our programs is a community fire resiliency program where we do community fuels reduction work. So that's something that you can learn more about on our website if you're interested about that. As Ryan's mentioning how important that is. And that's a great comment. That should definitely, it would definitely be helpful if that was part of something that the Forest Service did with communities in the area. Yeah, I actually kind of would like to talk for a little bit, if you have some time, to talk about basically the funding and how these are decisions made by our Congress people, and maybe a little bit more about how that works. I know that we have the Shasta-Trinity National Forest just put out a fee proposal here, and the public comment was due on the 6th. And, there's some division among what people would like to see happen. And I know that it is based primarily in funding. So I'm curious to know more about that. And
so this is a dumb question, being that I also live near the Shasta-Trinity, but just a different part. What is this fee proposal for? The wilderness or?
yeah, so the fee proposal is just for high traffic areas. So for instance, these areas like Bunny Flat that are frequently visited, there would now be fees there where they were free before. So, and some campsites as well will have fees added to them, or some fees will be increased. I forget what the percentage is. We did another presentation on this, but still a lot of the area will not have fees, but some of these areas that many are used to visiting will now have fees. So, yeah.
Well,
and this is just a fee proposal, so it hasn't actually passed through yet, but it is something that was proposed, and so we'll see how that goes with the public comment, and then also with the rest of the processes that go along with that.
Well, Congress should provide enough funding for our land managers that they charge zero fees to the public, as far as I'm concerned. That's not the policy of my organization. We have no policy on fees. But they don't provide that funding. So the agencies are desperate. And I can imagine how difficult. I've tried to go up Shasta once. I only got to Lake Helen, and the whole thing with the kitty litter and whatnot, it's all very complicated. As a management, what I'm referring to is how you have to relieve yourself in the Mount Shasta wilderness. You can't just dig a cat hole like you do in the, say, the Trinity Alps. you have to take your human waste out with you, and there's a bag of kitty litter they provide. So my point is, it's a very management intensive experience and to protect that fragile environment takes a lot of management. So all that costs money. So but it's totally regrettable that they got to charge anything, and it's all the fault of Congress. So I'm not saying people should support or oppose it. I don't even know how much they want to charge it. It's all the things that need to be discussed with the community. But I just think it's a shame. Oh, camping fees. They go so high sometimes. It's so outrageous, particularly on state parks. It's almost a social justice issue. You know, I think it is a social justice issue, actually. So, okay, but that's a different thing. Just, they need to step up and provide for our land managers.
Mhm.
Now, how does that work? Well, the way it works is, I'll tell you how it worked this year. This year, we did great in the House of Representatives. We got massive increases for the forest. But so the way it works actually is the President of the United States issues a recommended budget, usually in spring, early, when the first thaw starts to occur. And then, I don't know if it always has to start in the House, but maybe it does. The House starts the budget debate process. And there's a particular committee that covers the Forest Service. And even though the Forest Service is in the United States Department of Agriculture, it's covered by the House Appropriations Committee's subcommittee on Interior and related agencies. And one of the related agencies is the Forest Service. And so, and the reason why they put them there is that's where the other land management agencies are, the BLM and the Forest Service, the Bureau of Land Management and the Forest Service. And so the House this year, so the president suggested a great budget for the Forest Service this year. Great budget. And the other two agencies too, the National Park Service and the Bureau of Land Management. And then the House of Representatives, where Mr. LaMalfa is, passed a great budget for the Forest Service, though it wasn't as good as the president's recommended budget. Mr. LaMalfa voted against it, by the way, our congressman. And then, but it's passed by a majority. And so then it went to the Senate, where it's currently being debated. And I hadn't intended to raise this, but it would really be helpful if anyone would like to contact our senators, Senator Alex Padilla and Senator Dianne Feinstein, and ask them to support a really robust budget for the U.S. Forest Service. You don't even have to say how much, just say robust or more money. Anything like that would be good. Because what they've been getting is a flat budget. Usually what they do is maybe 3% more than the year before. And what that really is a decrease with inflation. Okay. And so we got good numbers in the House, and they're currently being cooked in the Senate. And it's in the Senate where we get killed every time. And so if you, the problem isn't Senator Feinstein, it's not Senator Padilla's, he's not the problem either. But it would be good if they heard from you, okay? And let them know that you support. And feel free to mention things like, oh my gosh, mention this fee issue here in Mount Shasta. Mention that as a thing that maybe makes you a little ticked, that even has to be discussed. You know, whether you support it or not, it's unfortunate. So
Yeah.
did I go on too long? I hope I didn't.
No,
not
at all.
okay.
No, I think that's a good point, is that whether you oppose or are for fees, it's something that can still be brought up within these higher ups as a point of discussion, maybe something to change. I have one more question to wrap up from somebody, David Fuller. He's asking, are all the forests doing plans at the same time, Or are they doing one common plan or individual plans? How does that work?
Oh, wow, what a great question. I wish I knew. So they seem to be treated as some kind of unit. And I don't know what that's going to mean exactly. But what it meant for the Sequoia, Sierra, and Inyo, the most recent forests, though they were under the Trump administration, what it meant for them was separate management plans and a single environmental impact statement, so unified environmental impact statement. Actually, I used a lot of jargon there. I didn't explain that. So, there's these management plans, and then that I've talked about, these long-term management plans, and then so the Sequoia and the Sierra and Inyo each had an individual one, but the environmental impacts of those plans were examined, which is a required thing under the law that the environmental impacts be studied. That document was done for all the forests together, which I don't know if I like. It's lumping too much together, but I guess they do it to save money, and they're broke.
Thanks for explaining that. I think that's all the questions we had. I'll check one last time. Somebody wrote in the comments, Reading to Tokyo is 5,000 miles.
Whoa, thank you
Yeah.
for that. What a factoid.
Yeah, I'm surprised to hear how many miles of roads there are.
Yeah, and I Googled that actually. That was truly the number from 2010. It's I could give you it's the Shasta-Trinity National Forest Travel Management Plan, I believe it was. So
yeah, so it sounds so these processes will go on for a few years, if not more, you said, and then these plans will basically go for 15 to 20 years after that. Like those will be the plans that are set in place. So it sounds really important that folks get involved if they want to see some good progress in these next couple of decades, I guess.
yeah, and they too could see children grow up as they work on conservation issues. So but yeah, maybe I'd be happy to check in with folks again, at the center and on this issue, especially once we have a date for something specific to do. So.
Yeah, that would be great. I'll definitely make sure to everyone who's watching and anybody who watches this later as a recording, I'll make sure to include all of the information on how to contact Ryan, how to get on Cal Wild's mailing list, and then also any website links that were in the presentation. I'll include those in the description of this video when I upload it to YouTube. And yeah, just really grateful for you being here and sharing all of your knowledge with us. And it was a great presentation.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. And yeah, I'll just say, let's work to spare the big trees and save all those special places that we so care about in this amazing region that we live in. So
yeah, I agree.
And I thank you and folks like Michelle for all the work they've done over the years. Michelle Berdyshevsky, shout out to her for all the work they've done over the years. So.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, she was really excited to know that you were going to be talking with us today and giving the presentation. So I'm sure she'll appreciate that. Yeah. And anybody who is watching, don't forget, if you're interested in volunteering or becoming a member of the Ecology Center, any contributions that we receive through membership can go towards helping fund our community fire resiliency program, which is a great way to protect our communities. And so just remember that, and I will link those things as well in the description. And yeah, well, bye for now, everyone. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.